Empress+Quick Wear+Save the male Lead+One on one sweet pet. Qiruo wore a book and put it into a female novel she was reading. In the book, women are the main characters, and the titles of Marquis and Prime Minister are indeed the Shuangwen in Shuangwen. I originally wanted to achieve my own career with a carefree attitude, regardless of personal matters. But when the poor little one knelt humbly in front of her and whispered, "Wife master," Qiruo couldn't help but pounce. It's just that, it's also good to bring a mop-up bottle. Petting and indulging without any worries, enjoying oneself freely. Keywords of the novel. The wife of the female protagonist, who wears fast clothes, is a doting husband without pop-ups. The wife of the female protagonist, who wears fast clothes, is a doting husband without pop-ups. Download complete text. The wife of the female protagonist, who wears fast clothes, is a doting husband with no pop-ups. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 1. Rubbing her slightly dizzy head, Qiruo opened her eyes in a daze. The thatched cottage that caught Qiruo's eye and the roof with half of the sky exposed made him unable to resist smacking his lips. The poor mice in this family had to leave with tears in their eyes when they arrived. Poor. That's not right. Oh my. Qiruo sat up excitedly. How could she be here? How could the head hurt so much? Pain, the tearing sensation made Qiruo tremble all over. After covering her head and slowing down for a while, Qiruo finally dragged her tired and sore body down to the ground. A poor quality blanket, although old but still clean, fell to the ground. Qiruo bent down and, disgusted, picked it up with 2 fingers and threw it onto the wooden board that could barely be called a bed. Looking down at her tattered clothes covered in patches, her feet filled with black unknown substances between her nails, and the occasional sour smell emanating from her body, Qiruo couldn't resist it in the end. I vomited. I vomited in a daze, and the stars moved around. NND. What harm did she do? How come I slept and ended up in a place like this where birds don't poop? Stumbling towards the door, the dazzling sunlight made people feel dizzy. If it weren't for the beautiful scenery outside, as if it were a fairyland on earth, Qiruo would have doubted whether he had gone to hell. With one hand supporting the door frame and the other supporting her waist, Qiruo let out a long sigh. Spring on the lake is like drawing a picture, with chaotic peaks scattered horizontally. Qiruo couldn't help but murmur, thinking of something, and then suddenly turned a handsome face white. Don't bully her for not reading a book, isn't that what was written in the sadistic novel she read last night? This scene. A broken water tank at the entrance, a low fence yard. The character's attire was ragged and inadequate. The poverty in this family is always in opposition to the content in the book. Looking down again at her current body, Qiruo was very certain that she had worn it onto the incompetent female protagonist in the book who had a tendency to commit domestic violence and only knew how to sit, eat and wait for death, except for being able to beat her husband. Qiruo had been holding a grudge for a long time because the twisted female protagonist in the book had the same name as her, but now she has sadly become the person she hates the most. What a sin! There was a heavy sound of footsteps coming from behind. Qiruo followed the sound and looked back, only to see a thin and delicate man struggling to move 2 buckets of water towards the broken jar next to the wall. This man's name is Yunzimu. He was originally an illegitimate son of Yun Yuanwei in the town. However, Yun's father died early, and the days in the Yun mansion were not as good as they were each day. The lord of the Yun family secretly took the initiative to sell several illegitimate sons in the mansion. On that day, Qiruo happened to be hunting a wild boar together with others and brought it to the town for sale. Seeing that Yunzimu was good-looking, Qiruo exchanged all the silver money he had saved up for renovating the house for Yunzimu. At first, Qiruo still had some pity for Yunzimu, but Yun Zimu just didn't allow Su Qiruo to touch him, and every time he made a scene, he would end up unhappy. Over time, Su Qiruo grew tired of his dull temperament and looked at this dilapidated house with some regret. I used my life savings to exchange for a husband, but I couldn't even touch him. It's really unlucky for 8 lifetimes. You know, why does she have to spend so much money like this? The silver money spent on buying Yunzimu is enough for her to marry 2 husbands. There are several people in the village who have a good relationship with Su Qiruo on weekdays. They like to mock Su Qiruo about this matter when joking. Later, after getting drunk, Su Qiruo started hitting Yunzimu. Since then, when Yunzimu looked at Su Qiruo again, his guarded gaze was mixed with some fear. The ending of Yunzimu in the book was not good. After Su Qiruo brought back another man from outside, he became a servant of his wife and husband, serving them day and day, and even being beaten frequently. On the day when Su Qiruo was not at home, the man found Ren Yazi and sold Yunzimu again. Unwilling to be humiliated again, Yunzimu chose to hang himself. His life can be described as extremely tragic. As a commoner, one can imagine how difficult life was for him. Later on, I met a wife who often suffered from domestic violence. Apart from being beaten and burdened, I never experienced the feeling of being loved. Perhaps sensing the gaze that fell on her, Yunzimu's body stiffened, her legs softened in pain, and 2 buckets of water fell to the ground like this, splashing all over the floor. Upon seeing this, Su Qiruo quickly regained his composure and strode towards Yunzimu. Yunzimu bit her lower lip tightly, holding her painful legs in both hands, gently closing her eyes, waiting for the unknown pain to fall on her body. Instinctively, Su Qiruo reached out to Yunzimu to help him up, revealing his fearful expression. Su Qiruo had to squat down to pick up the bucket that had fallen to the ground. Last night, Su Qiruo, who was drunk, probably just hit Yunzimu. He was holding the pole in his hand and fiercely slapped his leg. Looking at Yunzimu's trembling body, Su Qiruo's slightly hoarse voice came out uncomfortable. "Your clothes are all wet, go change them to a clean one, and I'll go get some water." After speaking, without waiting for Yunzimu's reaction, Su Qiruo carried a pole and a bucket out of the yard. Yunzimu let go of his hands that were holding his legs and secretly glanced at Su Qiruo, who was far away, his eyes full of doubt. "Surprisingly, I didn't get beaten today. What's wrong with my wife?" Hiss. Yunzimu secretly rolled up his pants legs and glanced at the injury on his leg, which was so painful that he took a cold breath. Yunzimu did not go in to change clothes, only twisted the water on his pants legs and stood up with his body propped up. He was afraid that Su Qiruo would suddenly come back and meet him, and even more so, he was afraid that she would tug at his clothes like last night. When Su Qiruo returned, he saw smoke coming from the stove and walked over with 2 buckets of water. She couldn't bear the unpleasant smell on her body, even if she didn't eat, she had to take a shower first. Could you please help me boil some hot water? I want to wash it." Su Qiruo awkwardly touched her nose, but she didn't dare to get too close to Yunzimu, fearing that she might harm the young man. Yunzimu was taken aback, his big eyes filled with confusion. Is the wife talking to him? Oh my! Forget it, I'll go wash it in the small river at the foot of the mountain. Su Qiruo felt that she couldn't wait to boil hot water anymore. It was already noon and the sun was shining, so she didn't think it would be cold. 2 buckets of water were neatly arranged at the entrance of the stove, and Su Qiruo went to the main room and dug out a tattered but well-washed shirt before leaving. Seeing Su Qiruo hurriedly walking away, Yunzimu couldn't help but panic in her heart. Has his wife been annoyed with him again? Feeling aggrieved, Yunzimu grabbed the corner of her clothes, lowered her eyes, and took a sniff. He didn't say he wouldn't boil water for her either. Kind reminder. This is the text of the Empress, please be careful when entering, babies. 1-on-1, double clean and sweet pets. The male lead's personality is different from life to life, delicate and cute, with a dark and domineering belly. Everything is available. The text is fictional and cannot be traced back to its roots. Everyone should be happy and there is no need to forcefully criticize certain words. Originally, it was a dynasty that was fabricated without proper consideration. We will discuss the mutual recommendation of books among writers ourselves, and we hope that the little ones don't want to Kentucky. It's not easy for female writers to write, and I hope that some colleagues won't make small moves in secret. It's not easy for anyone to write a book. Only by accumulating good deeds can one reap the rewards. If you don't like this type of fairy, just say goodbye here. The title and introduction of the book are clearly marked, and this is a female literature, M. I really want to make these 3 words bold and black, but it won't work. Oh, it's a very traditional type. Although this is a fast-paced article, according to the outline of each life, the length of each story varies, but the ending is definitely the same. Finally, I am very happy to meet you here. Reading novels is meant to pass the time and enrich our inner world and fantasies. Everyone must be happy. Due to work reasons, I am unable to build a skirt. If anyone wants to talk to me about the plot, just search for 1 Thoughts Like Dust, 2837876162, at October Quiet. Kiki. Rubbed against the intense heat like dust again, unable to do anything, thick-skinned and meaty to eat, hee. The babies reading books are all little fairies, and I cherish each one very much. Truly, even more so than pearls. A new article is coming, please take care of the little fairies. This is a female text, please be careful when entering, little cuties. Thank you for the strong support of Eni and Rookin. I recommend a great immortal book. Fast-wearing women's honor system. Pet husband addiction. The big shot wears a book to reach the female emperor. The heavenly petition of the rebirth of the Empress. The Empress, there is no coldness in the presence of Jean, my crown prince, your highness the 1,000-year glorious love of the Empress. A plethora of excellent articles, search for them and read them with a single thought like dust. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 2. Lolololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololol Qiruo finally had a good mood and was ready to plan his future well. Living in such a dilapidated house is definitely not acceptable. She needs to find a way to earn some money, build a big house, and drive a good car. No, ride a good horse, and then wander the world happily for a lifetime. Thinking of a peaceful life without internal competition and struggle in the future, Qiruo couldn't help but chuckle. In my past life, I was exhausted from work and became a dog. I finally managed to steal half a day of leisure from my life and felt guilty. Now she no longer has to compare herself with others everywhere, nor does she have to live in the noisy city, working hard every day for those hundreds of yuan in wages. The scenery here is beautiful and suitable for health preservation. After washing, Qiruo draped her hair behind her and casually rubbed the sour and smelly clothes she had taken off before. Although Qiruo wanted to throw this garment far away, he also knew that reality did not allow it. She is so poor now that she almost eats dirt and has to raise a young man. How could she still be as extravagant as in her past life? Thinking of that poor young man, Qiruo's pretty eyebrows suddenly furrowed. In the future she had just planned, Yun Zimu was not included. In this era of women in power, how should Yun Zimu survive without her? If he doesn't mind, in fact, she doesn't mind raising him one more. Carrying his washed clothes and disheveled wet hair, he returned to his so-called home, and upon seeing him, the young man knelt pitifully in the courtyard, his thin body trembling in the sunlight, appearing extremely pitiful. Qiruo was not someone with a heart of iron and stone, nor was she someone who didn't understand how to cherish fragrance and jade. Seeing this scene, she casually threw her wet clothes onto the clothesline and went to help Yunzi get up. Ah! Seeing the unfamiliar woman in front of her, Yunzimu let out a cry of surprise and turned a pale face. Immediately, he shrank his body and took a few steps back, looking at Qiruo with a wary expression on his face. My wife has gone out and will be back soon. You leave quickly, I've never seen you before. Yunzimu tried to complete his words, but his whole body had already shaken into a sieve. Qiruo was taken aback for a moment before quickly realizing. This little guy had never seen Qiruo's clean appearance before, so he didn't recognize who she was. Just looking at his small and domineering appearance, he is very cute. Qiruo couldn't help but chuckle and then bent down to pull up Yunzimu, who had already stiffened, from the ground, and patted the dirt on his pants with pudding. Yunzimu shrank back in pain, and his fear of the unfamiliar woman made him tremble more and more violently. Zimu, don't worry, I'm Qiruo. Qiruo struggled to control her voice and called out the unfamiliar Zimu. Zimu originally referred to a learned gentleman, and it is believed that Yunzimu's biological father hoped that his son could learn more and live a better life than him. But I don't want such a young man of the same age as a flower to have already suffered so many hardships. Wife master. Yunzimu raised her red eyes to look at Qiruo, with questions and confusion inside, but more reliance. Qiruo, who had never been seen with such a gaze before, suddenly ignited an unnamed desire for protection in her heart, or carrying such a small oil bottle did not affect her pleasure in the world, carefree. It's me. Qiruo nodded and didn't forget to grab the hair draped behind her with her hand, revealing her entire face. Yunzimu looked at her for a long time, seemingly still unable to believe that the handsome woman in front of him was the messy woman who bought him and then shamelessly bullied and scolded her. Zimu, I'm sorry. It was my fault before and I shouldn't hit you when I drank. I swear, I won't do it again in the future. Although her previous mistakes had nothing to do with her, she still had to bear the blame for the original owner. Who would have thought that she was now the Qiruo who had been beaten 1,000 times? Yunzimu shook his head in a panic, as he dared not accept his wife's apology. Moreover, the wife suddenly changed her temperament, and I don't know what she's up to. Yunzimu didn't believe that a person would suddenly change, so naturally she wouldn't believe Qiruo's promise not to hit him again. Qiruo's gaze fell on Yunzimu's feet in grass shoes, with a few visible bruises on his white and tender feet. When he realized that she had just accidentally touched his knee, he screamed in pain, thinking that it must have been the beast that injured him last night. Seeing that Yunzimu still had a guarded expression towards her, Qiruo was no longer eager to express his attitude of having reformed and become a new person. It's useless to just talk about this kind of thing, it still depends on how she will do it in the future. If Yunzimu really cannot forgive the harm his predecessor caused him, Qiruo is also willing to find a good family for him and let him live a peaceful life. Wife, let's eat. Yunzimu thought of the porridge already cooked in the pot, and then whispered to Qiruo. Qiruo watched as Yunzimu limped into the stove and soon pulled out a broken porcelain bowl from inside. Why is there only one bowl of congee? Qiruo frowned and asked, is this family so poor that 2 people can eat a bowl of congee? What's more, this thing, which is barely called congee, is actually just a bowl of boiled water with a few grains of brown rice lying on it. Wife, I. Yunzimu became nervous and then knelt down again. Fortunately, Qiruo was quick-witted and helped the person. I'm not blaming you. It's just a bowl of congee. How do we eat it? Qiruo patiently explained that the child was too timid, afraid of startling him with every word she said. Perhaps he was afraid of being beaten and scolded, but Qiruo could also understand his fear and caution in front of her. Yunzimu blinked his eyes in doubt, then explained in a low voice. This is the wife's congee, not ours. This is mine. So what are you eating? Qiruo is extremely curious. She eats so shabby, can't this child eat grass? Based on Qiruo's understanding of Yunzumu, he would never dare to hide his food and would not do so. Yunzimu only uttered the word "I" and then lowered his eyes without taking any further words. What is he going to say? Tell her he's waiting for her to eat the leftover. Qiruo suddenly stood up and strode towards the stove. Yunzimu's eyes flashed a hint of disappointment, and then he trotted along in pain. Wife, I didn't steal anything, really. The explanation from the villain stopped Qiruo. Did her recent actions misunderstand him again? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 3, Qiruo looked at the empty bottom of the pot and turned his head in displeasure. Why didn't you cook your meal? Although her tone was harsh, this time Yunzumu didn't feel scared. Wife, is she not suspecting him of stealing food, but caring about him? But why did she suddenly start caring about him? Is it really difficult to sell him to someone else? Thinking of this, Yunzumu suddenly became afraid. Last night, when his wife hit him with a pole, she said he was a broom. Because she bought him, she spent all the silver in the family. She wished she could sell him to an 80-year-old woman to raise him, and she didn't want to continue raising him. Wife, I eat very little, don't sell me. Yunzimu didn't know where the courage came from, so he rushed forward and hugged Qiruo's arm before kneeling down, constantly begging for mercy. Qiruo exerted a slight force on both hands to prevent Yunzimu's injured knee from touching the hard ground again. She only looked at his tearful appearance, and Qiruo was puzzled. The book did not mention that the original owner sold him. Why did he say that? In fact, the original owner still had some affection for Yunzumu. Otherwise, he wouldn't have forced him no longer due to his unwillingness, but instead borrowed wine every day to relieve his worries. If the original owner really wants to do something, how can he withstand it with Yunzimu's thin body? You are not allowed to kneel down to me again in the future, otherwise I will really sell you. Qiruo was worried that Yunzimu's wound would affect his future walking, and he couldn't change his habit of kneeling easily, so he had to threaten like this. Although this is a bit harsh, it still works. I saw Yunzumu standing up straight, with red eyes staring at Qiruo, silently telling her that he would listen. Let's go eat first. With a helpless sigh, Qiruo took out an old bowl from the broken wooden cupboard next to him, turned around to look at Yunzumu, and saw him obediently following him before walking forward with peace of mind. Divide most of the porridge in the bowl into another bowl, and Qiruo pushes the extra bowl of congee to Yunzumu. Eating. This family was so poor that they didn't even have a single pickled vegetable. Qiruo was afraid that birds would fade out of his mouth, so he drank the thin soup in 2 bites and casually wiped his mouth, saying, after you finish your meal, stay at home and I'll go out and find some food to eat. Don't cook tonight. After speaking, Qiruo pointed to Yunzumu's leg again and said, if you walk around casually any longer, you may leave behind a root cause of illness. If you don't want to become a cripple in the future, just lie in bed obediently. I'll see if I can find some herbs for you to come back. Qiruo remembers that Plantago asiatica can treat external injuries. This type of grass can be seen everywhere, and she can collect some later. Yunzimu held the warm rice bowl in both hands and nodded obediently. Just Qiruo's lying obediently in bed still made Yunzimu scared. Knowing that Yunzimu would feel uncomfortable here, Qiruo stood up first. Yunzimu quickly followed up, but was stopped by Qiruo raising his hand. You sit and eat. After circling around the room, Qiruo went to the stove and yard twice. She took a hemp rope and a sack and left the yard. When leaving, Yunzimu didn't forget to close the fence door tightly, which made her heart skip a beat. Yunzimu looked at Qiruo's back as he walked further and further, his eyes filled with confusion. My wife seems to be different from before, and she still seems to be the same as before. He couldn't say exactly what was different, but such a mistress really made him feel a bit flattered. Qiruo walked towards the mountains as soon as she left, and on the way, she occasionally met a few villagers who were picking firewood. They all looked at her with an surprised expression, thinking that they had never seen such a Qiruo before. After being washed clean, Qiruo is actually 5 or 6 people, making it impossible to associate her with the messy ghost from the past. The grass shoes under her feet were a bit rough. Thinking of Yunzimu's exposed toes, Qiruo secretly thought to herself that she must find a way to earn some money, at least not to let Yunzimu suffer with her. Even if Yunzimu really meets someone she wants to marry in the future, she can't let people underestimate him. She needs to prepare more dowry for him. This child is really suffering, she needs to add some sweetness to his life. Just as Qiruo thought of sweetness, she saw a wild fruit tree not far away. The small red fruits on it were extremely cute, just like Yunzimu's face. The shorter fruits below have all been picked by people, but there are still some good ones left at higher altitudes. Putting down the hemp rope and sack, Qiruo hugged the tree with both hands and rushed up to the top of the tree. The martial arts she learned in her past life to defend herself have all been used to pick fruits for Xiaofulang, and it is not a waste of learning. Picking a bright red fruit and rubbing it in her palm, Qiruo took a careful bite. It tasted sweet and tasted like an apple, and she dared to eat it in large bites. Thinking that a young boy like Yunzimu would love to eat these things the most, Qiruo wrapped himself in clothes and picked all the larger fruits he could reach. With a gentle leap, Qiruo landed on the ground and poured the red fruit into a burlap bag. She picked up another one and stuffed it into her mouth before walking towards the mountain with satisfaction. Bitter chicory. Dandelion. Qiruo happily crouched down to pick up those wild vegetables, thinking that he could finally change his taste at night. No wonder ancient people often said that relying on mountains to eat mountains and relying on water to eat water, there are treasures everywhere on this mountain. After the strength of Qiruo's wine had passed, her body became much lighter, and her feet were not slow. Seeing that it was still early, she wanted to walk towards the deep mountains. But as soon as Yunzimu thought of the scared appearance she had seen after taking a shower, Qiruo gave up on this idea. Let's wake up early tomorrow and enter the deep mountains again. If it gets dark and she hasn't gone back yet, Yunzimu may be afraid to stay at home alone. Picking up some wild vegetables, Qiruo didn't forget to pick a few pieces of plantago grass to go back. Yunzimu's injury was quite serious, so before she could earn money to hire a doctor for him, she had to use plantago grass to cover it first. Little pheasant, although you're still young and shouldn't have been caught, there's still an injured husband in my family who needs to be raised, so I'm sorry you went to reincarnation earlier. Qiruo held a wild grass in his mouth and murmured softly, then put down the sack on his back to catch the wild chicken. Although the pheasant is not big, it is enough for her to have a feast with Yunzimu. The law of the jungle, in order to survive, she also has no choice but to take care of many things. Breaking off the wings of the wild chicken and tying it up, Qiruo no longer walked inside, but turned around and walked towards home. On the way back, Qiruo also found a nest of rabbits with no fully grown teeth. She thought of keeping these rabbits at home and letting Yunzimu cut some grass to feed them on weekdays. She would stew them when they grew up. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 4. Yunzimu, who had been lying in bed obediently, couldn't help but worry when she saw that the sky outside was getting dark and there was no news of Qiruo returning. He is not worried that Qiruo will have an accident, he is afraid that she will be called to drink again, and when she gets drunk, she will come back and hit him again. But she clearly said she wouldn't hit him again today, and Yunzimu didn't know if she should believe her. If she really didn't drink or hit me again today, just trust her once. Yunzimu comforted himself by saying that only in this way did he feel that the long wait was no longer so terrifying. Zimu, I'm back. Worried that Yunzumu would be scared when she heard noise outside, Qiruo greeted the people inside as soon as she entered the door. There was a hint of joy in Yunzumu's eyes. His wife had returned so early and her voice was very clear, as if she had not really drunk. An unnamed joy spread to the bottom of her heart, and Yunzimu's eyes also carried a hint of laughter. Just as I was about to get up and go outside to welcome Qiruo, the person had already walked in with great strides. Seeing Yunzimu obediently lying in bed, Qiruo praised him with satisfaction. Zimu's good behavior should be rewarded. After speaking, Qiruo poured out the fruit he had picked for Yunzimu from the sack, and the tempting fruit rolled all over the table. Yunzimu was so shocked that he covered his mouth and forgot to breathe. "Wife master." Yunzimu blushed and let out a sticky cry, which sounded somewhat coquettish to Qiruo. "These are all yours, take your time to eat." Taking 2 fruits and stuffing them into Yunzimu's arms, Qiruo went to the outer room and brought a bamboo basket in. He put the red fruits in the basket and placed them in the corner of the table, then grabbed a handful of plantago and walked out. Looking at the 2 big and red fruits in her arms, Yunzimu's nose suddenly became sore. The wife not only did not drink or beat him, but also brought him red fruits. In no time, Qiruo walked in with a bowl in hand. Sitting by the bed, Qiruo said to Yunzimu, "Zimu, I need to apply medicine to your wound. It will hurt a bit. If you can't help but scream, it's okay." After speaking, Qiruo went to lift Yunzimu's pants legs. Yunzimu's body stiffened at first, and then she had to dodge. With Qiruo's comfort, she tried to relax and lowered her head with her red ears. "My wife just wants to drug him, not touch him, it's okay." Yunzimu couldn't help comforting herself like this in her heart. A cool sensation hit her, and the dark green medicine juice applied to her already scabbed knee, but there was no imagined pain. Qiruo looked at the pale legs covered in blue and purple, and cursed the original owner again in her heart. "Not human, not human. How did you beat someone up like this?" Even if this kind of person turns into a piao, they still have to resort to cooking oil to clear their grudges. Yunzimu held on to the red fruit in his arms and stared blankly at Qiruo's movements, forgetting the pain. After his father passed away, no one has ever drugged him like this again. The Lord does not like these illegitimate sons, they are prone to beating and scolding, and getting injured is a common occurrence. "Does it hurt?" Qiruo looked carefully at Yunzimu, and when he shook his head, she felt a bit guilty. Although this injury was not caused by her, it was actually caused by the predecessor of her body. "Zimu, I'm sorry." With a sorry cry, Yunzimu was shocked and the red fruit in his hand rolled into the bed, causing the little one's heart to soften again. In fact, it seems that the wife is not very bad either, at least she is much better than the Lord. After the Lord hit him, he never allowed anyone to deliver medicine to him, let alone apologize to him. "I don't blame my wife, it's all my fault." Yunzimu lowered her eyes and whispered, "It was he who refused to serve his wife's master and went to bed that got beaten, and it's not entirely his fault." But thinking of what his father had told him before his death, Yunzimu gritted his lips tightly and didn't say much. Even if it were to start over again, he would still choose this way. After taking the medicine, Qiruo didn't put down Yunzimu's rolled-up pants, so she decided to let the wound dry like this. "I'm going to cook, you can have a fruit cushion first." Thinking about killing the chicken and shedding its feathers, Qiruo decided to let Yunzimu eat a fruit cushion for her stomach as the dinner would not be ready for a while. "Wife, let me go." Yunzimu was startled and struggled to get up. "How can my wife do this cooking job? You have an injury on your leg, and I will be cooking for the next few days. You can take good care of it." Qiruo pushed Yunzimu's struggling body back, pulled the blanket beside him and covered his stomach. He then picked up the red fruit that had just rolled into the bed and stuffed it back into Yunzimu's hand before taking a big step out. "Gollum." His stomach let out a growl, and Yun Zimu quietly reached out and rubbed his hand twice. He looked at the red fruit in his hand and hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth and taking a small bite. The sweetness at the entrance reached Yun Zimu's heart, and as she covered her mouth, Yun Zimu felt that it was beating so fast. Turns out the fruit would be so sweet. Qiruo is not proficient in cooking, but he also doesn't completely understand. After tidying up the chicken, chopping it into large pieces and blanching it with water, I picked up a small piece of chicken and placed it in a dry pan to slide the pan, then put the chicken in. There were no seasonings or side dishes, only a few grains of coarse salt in the salt jar in the corner, but this was already enough for Qiruo. Wash the picked wild vegetables clean again, heat them slightly with boiling water, and then put them on a plate. There was no sauce to dip in, so Qiruo had to sprinkle a few grains of salt to avoid only bitterness. The smell of chicken gradually drifted out, and Qiruo put some chicken soup aside to make some congee for Yun Zimu tomorrow morning. Thinking of the porridge she had eaten at noon, Qiruo couldn't help looking at her own rice jar. I saw only a thin layer of brown rice in the bottomed rice jar. No wonder Yunzimu was reluctant to put a few more grains when cooking. Food is the paramount necessity of the people, and only when they are full can they have the strength to think of others, right? Qiruo muttered to himself, no matter what, I will go to the mountain tomorrow. After taking out the stewed chicken, Qiruo took 2 pairs of chopsticks and 2 bowls to the main room. At first, Yun Zimu smelled the meat and thought it was a problem with his nose. The red fruit just now was enough for him to savor it for a long time. The meal is ready, I'll help you over. The sleeves that Qiruo had rolled up were not put down. When the powerful hands touched Yun Zimu's arms, Yun Zimu felt his feet soften and his whole body was weak. I offended you. Qiruo apologized and bent down to pick up Yun Zimu, who was still in a daze. When he realized, he had already sat on the wooden stool in the outer room. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 5, I'm lucky today to catch a little wild chicken. Although it's a bit slimmer, it's still enough for us to have a meal. As Qiruo spoke, he put both chicken legs into the Yunzimu bowl and then picked up a chicken rib to nibble on himself. It's quite delicious, but I'm missing some fragrant leaves. When I have time, I'll go to town and buy all the seasoning and come back. I'll make you a better one next time. After Qiruo finished speaking, he realized that the people around him had never touched their chopsticks. What's wrong? Don't you like it? Putting down the bones in her hand, Qiruo asked in a casual manner. Does this child feel that her craftsmanship is too poor and she has no appetite? But how could she eat this chicken much better than the thin soup at noon? Yunzimu shook her head and said with red eyes, thank you, wife. Why do we need to talk about this between you and me? Eat while it's hot, it might smell fishy when it's cold. Qiruo almost gave a lot of meat to Yunzimu, and only nibbled on some even with belt bones, but for her, it was already enough. Yunzimu nibbled on the chicken, never eating a complete chicken leg. Even when my father was still alive in the Yun mansion, only my mother occasionally stayed overnight in his yard, and the father and son were able to have a full meal. But the person in the kitchen wouldn't give them such 2 complete chicken legs. At most, they would give them a chicken rack with little meat. Even then, Dad would always smile with satisfaction. Yunzimu knew that his father didn't like his mother, but he still hoped that his mother would come often because only when her came could they have a full meal. Qiruo rubbed her full belly and got up to fill the stove with 2 bowls of water. One bowl was placed in front of Yunzimu, while the other bowl was dried by herself. Satisfied with a small burp, Qiruo explained the matter of Yunzi Mumminger's recovery. There's not much food left at home. I'll go to the mountains tomorrow and take a look. I'm afraid I won't be able to come back at noon. You stay at home alone, tie the door tightly, don't go out, remember to eat on time. Wife master. Yunzimu raised his face and called out with concern. The deep mountains were very dangerous, and many people dared not enter. Occasionally, it was difficult for someone to come out even if they entered. Even if they came out, they were often covered in bruises. I heard there is a big object inside that can easily harm people. Although his wife was not good to him before, he also did not want her to have any trouble. Yunzimu couldn't understand why Qiruo suddenly changed his temper. He treated him so differently today, but he wouldn't believe that Qiruo had become so because he liked or pitied him. He just thought she was tired of him and wanted to torture him in a different way. As long as there is no expectation, there will be no disappointment. This is what his father often taught him before, and Yunzimu has always remembered it. But such a mistress had to make him want to be good to her. In the past, she used to go out drinking without returning home at night. While he was afraid, he also felt a hint of happiness in his heart. But today he suddenly heard her say he was going into the mountain, but he was afraid. No matter how hard the wife is, she is also the backbone of the family. If something really happens to her, she won't be able to earn back a few grains of brown rice every day. What will she do then? And, for a good wife like him, even if he pretended, he didn't want her to have anything to do. Don't worry, I will definitely come back before dark and won't make you afraid. Qiruo did not act too sentimental to think that others were worried about her. After all, anyone else could not forget her past brutality just because of her gentleness today. Taking advantage of the lack of work in the field, I will go for more walks in the mountains during this period. If I can hunt some live animals to exchange for some money, I can treat your injuries well. Speaking of the last sentence, Qiruo clearly lost his confidence. Aren't these injuries attributed to her? These injuries don't matter, they're really okay. Yunzimu urgently said, he has long been accustomed to how many blows he has received from childhood to adulthood. But it just hurts for a while, and after a while, it will be better. Just be obedient and obedient. Tomorrow I'll heat the rice in the pot, and you'll eat it yourself. The leg injury is a bit serious, so be careful when walking. After speaking, Qiruo got up and walked out, leaving only Yunzimu sitting there dumbfounded. I don't know where Qiruo dug out a broken bamboo cage, which contained 4 little rabbits as big as their fingers. This is what I picked up at the foot of the mountain today. You can take care of them first, feed them some rice soup now, and they can eat tender grass in a few days. Seeing a flash of joy in Yunzimu's eyes, Qiruo knew that these 4 little rabbits had won his heart. Perhaps people have been lonely for a long time, and they all want to find a companion. Just like when she first met Yunzimu, besides pity, it was more like having an extra companion, making herself less lonely. At night, Qiruo gave the bed to Yunzimu and went to the stove to sleep on the pile of straw that Yunzimu used to sleep on. Goddamn, Qiruo is really inhumane. How could he abuse others like this? Qiruo felt uncomfortable all over with the straw that made her feel uncomfortable. She couldn't imagine how Yunzimu usually slept here. Yesterday, when Qiruo was holding her painful head, she even despised the hard wooden bed. Now, when she thinks about it, she actually misses it a bit. People are really not satisfied, only by comparing can they know how good they have. Qiruo here felt so uncomfortable that she couldn't sleep, and Yunzimu in the room also couldn't sleep. What's wrong with the wife? Not only did he not drink or beat people, but he also picked fruits, cooked, and gave the little rabbit as a gift. Surprisingly, he even gave up his bed, which is somewhat puzzling. Hiss. Gently flipping over, the pain in her legs came, causing Yunzimu to shiver. I seem to have suffered some serious injuries this time. Isn't it because my wife felt guilty for beating me hard last night and only treated me so well today? Perhaps it is. Yunzimu thought about it and fell asleep, but before going to bed, he did think so. Before the chickens in the village could crow, Qiruo had already climbed up. He wiped his face with the cold water in the bucket at random, and Qiruo lit the fire by feeling the darkness. He cooked a pot of porridge with the chicken soup he had served last night, then went out to fill the water tank with water, picked up a mouthful of rice at random, and went out with a sickle, a hemp rope and a sack on his back. With the faint morning light, Qiruo walked confidently towards the light along the small path he had walked yesterday. Passing by the fruit tree, Qiruo climbed up and picked a few fruits, stuffing them into her arms. This was probably going to be her lunch. There is no noodles at home, so naturally there is no dry food to carry with you. Reluctantly using a few fruits to satisfy hunger is better than being hungry. Thank you for your support, little ones. Thank you for your great support. Love you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 6, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 6, when Yunzimu woke up, it was already dawn. The little one was first startled, thinking that he hadn't woken up to boil water and cook for his wife, and his face turned pale in fear. But when he saw his own situation clearly, he remembered what his wife had said last night. Has the wife really left? I struggled to get up from the bed and dragged my sore legs to the stove, where there were scattered flames and the pot smelled of meat. Yunzimu took a sniff and ate so much meat last night. He hasn't even felt hungry yet. When he lifted the lid of the pot to see the thick congee in it, Yunzimu jumped up in surprise. How could the wife be such a spendthrift? Oh. Perhaps it was pulling the wound, and Yunzimu took a small breath, her face turning red with anger. Ignoring the pain in her legs, Yunzimu took a few steps to the edge of the rice jar and looked at the bottom of it. Her eyes turned red again. I thought she had improved, but to my surprise, she didn't even think about life anymore. She was asked to cook all the rice and grain this month. How will they live for the rest of the month? The fragrance entered her nose, and Yunzimu suddenly lost his appetite. He had been so concerned about his wife today and disregarding tomorrow. Fortunately, he had been praising her in his heart last night, and she was just trying a different way to stir things up. Compared to worrying about having no food to eat in the future, what makes Yunzimu even more uncomfortable is her disappointment with her wife. He was still hoping that she was really different. It was ultimately his extravagant expectations. And Qiruo, who was being complained about by others, was still unknowingly calculating how to make Xiaofu Lang live a happy and stable life. The further she walked into the mountains, the colder she felt. Qiruo shook her linen clothes, clenched the sack on her shoulder, and continued moving forward. The sky gradually brightened up. Phoenix tail fern. Qiruo's eyes lit up. Isn't that cluster on the ground exactly the phoenix tail fern? She knew this herb, and during the biology class, the teacher even specifically mentioned that the entire herb of the phoenix tail fern can be used as a medicine, clearing heat and dampness, cooling blood and detoxifying, and can also stop diarrhea and treat dysentery. At that time, Qiruo still thought that if she had traveled through time, she would definitely find this herb and sell it for a good price. The slender leaves of the phoenix tail fern were not easy to put into a burlap bag, so Qiruo picked up a few pieces of grass and wrapped them together, then spread them flat at the bottom of the burlap bag. If hunting doesn't work, it's also good to pick up some medicinal herbs to sell. You have to add some rice, flour, oil, and salt to your home. Qiruo walked all the way to the mountains and picked up several medicinal herbs that she could recognize, but still did not see any prey. Click. Suddenly, there was a sound coming from the forest beside Qiruo. She quickly stopped and focused on listening. Bear Qiruo's face turned pale, and he ran to a sturdy tree in 3 or 2 steps, then climbed up with his hands and feet on the ground. It's okay if she doesn't run, but as soon as she ran, the big bear walked towards her. Even 10 Qiruo may not necessarily be their match for their imposing and majestic appearance. Qiruo was thinking about how to escape this calamity. If possible, it would be best to subdue this blind bear. It can be considered that her trip was not in vain. Thinking that Xiong was most afraid of fire, Qiruo began to calculate in his heart. Although there were many trees around, most of them were non-flammable. Qiruo suddenly glanced at a deep pit not far away, which was covered by branches, but could still be seen clearly from her perspective. Perhaps it was dug by a former hunter. If she could trick the bear into that pit, she would have a way to subdue it. Big chubby bear, how about we make a bet? If you don't mean to hurt me, we'll leave each other. But if you mean to eat me, then we'll have to rely on our own abilities. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Qiruo was almost starving himself, so there was nowhere else to worry about. As long as the bear leaves on its own, she will pretend not to have seen it. But if it insists on hurting her, then it all depends on who is lucky. Zimu is still waiting for me at home. He is injured and cannot be left unattended, so I must not die. Qiruo's words seemed to be speaking to herself, as well as to the bear. But Kumamoto also came out to hunt. How could he let such a white and tender person go here? Ah! The bear suddenly let out a scream, which frightened Qiruo and made him shudder, almost falling off the tree. As Qiruo looked at the momentum in Xiong's eyes, he straightened his expression and tightly pursed his lips as he jumped down from the tree. Life and death are determined by fate, come on. Qiruo jumped down from the tree without daring to stop for a moment, and ran desperately towards the hunting pit. The fat black bear landed on all fours, dragging its not bulky body towards Qiruo. How could Qiruo run past that bear? He had a lot of luck in his escape, and even his handsome face was scratched several times. Big black bear, if Qi were alive today, he would definitely use your skin bag to change my husband's clothes. Qiruo shouted angrily as she ran, and as she was about to reach the edge of the hunting pit, she suddenly quickened her speed. The bear's running speed is already fast, but when it saw the person in front running faster, it also started running. What Qi wanted was its unstoppable inertia. She suddenly fell to the ground and rolled, grabbed a vine with both hands, and hung herself by the edge of the hunting pit. And the chubby bear, because it was too bulky, threw its whole body into the hunting pit, making a few plops sounds accompanied by the bear's painful cries, and the lingering bloody smell. Qiruo took a few strong breaths, propped up his injured body and looked towards the hunting pit, and couldn't help but burst into a cold sweat. She is really lucky. The hunting pit is covered with sharpened bamboo. If she hadn't grabbed and dropped one just now, the fate of this chubby bear would have been hers. It's okay, Qiruo is not afraid of death. She is afraid that if something happens to her, no one will take care of Yunzimu. How can a timid person like him live alone in the future? Startled by her own thoughts, Qiruo struggled to climb up and sat on the ground, holding her heart in a daze for a long time. She unconsciously regarded Yunzimu as her lover, thinking of him everywhere. Is this a legacy left by her predecessor, or has she delved into the era of reading before? Or perhaps these 2 days of contact made her truly take Yunzimu as her responsibility. Suddenly lying on his back, Qiruo raised his arm and wiped the blood from his face, murmuring, well, no matter why, Yunzimu is my responsibility. She tilted her head and glanced at the chubby bear that was already deflated, and Qiruo lay back weakly. The original owner was a woman of great strength, perhaps this was the only useful advantage she left for Qiruo. Otherwise, even if he understood how to save effort, Qiruo might not be able to pull up such a big fat bear. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 7. Tie the hemp rope to the tree. Qiruo wanted to use the pulley principle to pull the bear up, but found that his strength was completely insufficient. It seems that relying on her own abilities is not enough. Thinking of the book that once the original owner and a few friends hunted a wild boar together, Qiruo decided to go back to the village and ask someone to help move it together. When the time came, they would have some silver money. After making a mark nearby, Qiruo carried a burlap bag and walked outside the mountain. This time, it will take half a day for the bear to return to the village, and it may be late at night when someone is called in to pull the bear back. Afraid that Yunzimu was worried, Qiruo went home first. Yunzimu, who had eaten nothing all day, sat in the yard washing the bedding and blanket that had been removed from the bed, while hanging her eyes and thinking about how to make a living for the second half of the month. My wife cooked half a month's worth of food in one meal, and he really can't eat it. After seeing Qiruo return covered in blood, Yunzimu, who was already extremely dissatisfied and complained a lot about her, all her complaints disappeared, leaving only a heart full of fear and worry. "Wife, what's wrong with you?" Looking at the injury on Qiruo's face, Yunzimu hurriedly stood up and rushed over, not even paying attention to kicking over the laundry basin. Qiruo was afraid of staining Yunzimu's clothes, so she took a few steps back and smiled at him, "But I just fell a few times in the mountains. It's all skin injuries, it's not a problem." Speaking, Qiruo placed the burlap bag in the cool corner of the wall and washed his face with half a basin of clean water on the side. "But, wife, you have shed a lot of blood." Yunzimu's voice trembled slightly. He should have secretly rejoiced when he saw Qiruo injured, but she always bullied him. But in his heart, apart from fear and worry, he had no hint of joy. "Don't be afraid, those are the blood from the bear, not mine." Qiruo not only had to endure the pain of the wound, but also comforted Yunzimu in turn, which felt very uncomfortable. "Have you had your meal yet? Didn't you say that your leg injury wasn't healed and you were not allowed to go down to the ground? Why did you wash the bedding again?" Qiruo bent down to pick up the overturned basin, rubbed it hard a few times, and then hung the blanket up. Qiruo, who had intended to enter the house and drink some water, stiffened with tenderness when she saw the motionless rice in the pot. "Zimu, come over here." Upon hearing Qiruo call him, Yunzimu didn't care about the injury on her leg and quickly ran after him. When Yunzimu saw the displeasure on Qiruo's face, she closed her eyes and waited for the unknown pain. Why not eat? The imagined pain did not come, but a cold hand pinched his nose, making it difficult for him to catch his breath. Yunzimu's eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her eyes. What caught her eye was Qiruo's heartache on her face. Yunzimu couldn't help but be taken aback. His wife didn't mean to hit him, she was just blaming him for not eating. Perhaps Qiruo has been too gentle these days, and Yunzimu dared to express her dissatisfaction. "My wife shouldn't waste so much. We only have this rice and grain at home. If we eat every meal, wouldn't we be starving in the days to come?" Yunzimu's slightly puffy little face was like a little squirrel chewing on pine nuts, and Qiruo only then realized the cuteness of this young man. I only heard Qiruo chuckle lightly, with a rare gentle tone and a hint of indulgence. "Is it really useless for you to be your wife's head like this? Zimu, I will definitely work hard to make money for you to live a good life in the future and never act recklessly again. Are you willing to give me a chance?" Qiruo's words were extremely serious, making Yunzimu involuntarily want to nod. "Then you can eat obediently. I'll go find someone to bring the bear back and sell it at the market tomorrow. I'll bring you some delicious food tonight." Qiruo didn't dare to delay any longer. If the bear wasn't brought back for a while, she couldn't rest assured. "Wife, let's go after dinner." Yunzimu whispered, "He's not someone who cares about people." When he said this, he was taken aback. "I've eaten it, you've eaten all that. If I come back tonight to see if there's still food in the pot, I'll take it all out and feed the dog." Qiruo scared Yunzimu a few words, thinking that he might not come back too early at night, so he added another word of advice. "I'll lock the door for you later. Don't wait for me tonight, rest earlier." Before Yunzimu could ask more questions, Qiruo walked out of the door again with a hemp rope in hand. Staring blankly at the figure of the person leaving, Yunzimu's heart twitched again. My wife doesn't seem to be that bad either. Thinking of Qiruo's threatening words before leaving, Yunzimu hurries to bring out the hot congee in the pot. After eating and feeding the rabbits, Yunzimu bolted the door from inside and took out a handkerchief from the broken wooden cabinet nearby to embroider it. After being bought back by Qiruo, he has been relying on selling handkerchiefs to exchange for some copper coins to support his family. Although he is no longer beaten, he is still afraid of going hungry. If there is no food left at home, the wife will definitely sell him. Although Qiruo may not be considered a good person, he is also his wife's master. If he were to serve different women like those worldly gentlemen, he would rather die. When Qiruo left home, he followed the description in his memory and went to find several people named Lu Dasheng. Lu Dasheng was quite kind and reasonable among the few friends Qiruo had made before. Another person who often plays with Qiruo is Lu Qimei from the village head's family. The reason why she is called Lu Qimei is because she has 6 older brothers above her. After finally getting such a daughter, the family has been pampering her, which is why she gets along with Qiruo, who is not very dedicated to her work. Previously, Qiruo did all the dirty things, and this Lu Qimei also got involved. Lu Ziping can be considered the one who listens to Qiruo the most. She has lost her mother and father since childhood and often comes to Su's house to eat. Even her name was given by Qiruo's mother. 4 young women entered the deep mountain together and were all stunned when they saw the big black bear. Qiruo, you are really amazing. You can even catch such a big thing. Lu Ziping couldn't help but praise Qiruo. The wild boar they hunted a while ago was sold for silver by Qiruo to buy Yunzimu. Now that the big black bear is sold, they have money. Yeah. Qiruo, you're really brave. Lu Qimei also followed with a smack of her lips, and then rolled up her sleeves to help Lu Dasheng tie the rope. This is all in exchange for your sister's life. Qiruo pointed to the wound on his body, and the few of them instantly fell silent. Since we have started a family, we should live a good life. Lu Dasheng, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly said, I heard that Qiruo often beats and scolds the husband he bought after getting drunk. Lu Dasheng tried to persuade her, but Qiruo couldn't listen, and others couldn't do anything about it. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 8. Now, seeing Qiruo come out to earn money so recklessly, Lu Dasheng just added another word of advice. After all, Qiruo grew up together from a young age. Apart from having a bad temper, her nature is actually good. Otherwise, Lu Dasheng would not have played with her. If Qi were to hit her husband at home, it wouldn't be entirely her fault. They would spend all their money buying back a man, but that man wouldn't let them touch him. This would make anyone angry. It's just that Lu Dasheng can't see such a thing. No matter what, he can't fight men, can he? What Big Sister said is that we are not young anymore and have passed the year of mischief. We must live a good life in the future. Qiruo smiled and responded, causing the remaining 3 to widen their eyes. During the conversation, the rope was already tied. Several people put in a lot of effort and finally pulled the big black bear up, and Qiruo felt like he was about to collapse. Who? After gasping for a few breaths, Lu Qimei said, this big thing should be sold for at least 30 taels. Qiruo squinted her eyes and calculated, then curled her lips and said, 50 liang. What? It can sell for 50 taels. Lu Ziping suddenly sat up and stared blankly at Qiruo, asking. This bear is covered in treasures from top to bottom, including bear bile, paws, and fur. You don't understand. I promise I won't treat the siblings unfairly this time. Qiruo patted Lu Ziping's shoulder and said with a smile. She needs to renovate her house and build a courtyard wall to save Yunzimu from being afraid when she is alone at home, which will cost her a lot of money. In addition, buying groceries and rice, buying a new set of clothes and shoes for Yunzimu, and changing the bedding at home. By this calculation, I'm afraid none of this silver can be used. These three people are quite interesting. Even though they have already reached the top of the willow branches on the moon, no one complains about anything because it's too late. Do you want to send this bear to your house first? Lu Dashing asked. Just as Qiruo was about to nod, she thought of something and said, "It's better to ask Qimei to pull out the car and put it directly on the car. I'll keep an eye on it at night." Yunzimu was already timid. If he saw such an object, he might have been so scared. As if sensing her concern, Lu Qimei couldn't help but tease, "When will Qiruo learn to cherish fragrance and jade?" This word was still given to her by Qiruo before, but now she has actually used it on her. "Who hurts if my husband doesn't hurt me? I'll understand when you get married." Qiruo gave Lu Qimei a bad look and urged her to go and pull the cart. "Forget it, it's already around midnight. We won't go back to sleep either. Let's just transport this thing to the town. It's hard to tell if we meet someone during the day." Except for Qiruo who bought a young man, only Lu De became a family among the remaining three. Now even she has said so, and Lu Qimei and Lu Ziping have no objection. "Wait for me for a while, I'll go home and get some things." After Qiruo finished speaking, he didn't wait for someone else's consent before flying towards his own direction. Lu Ziping pursed his lips and said, "De Xing Jie, do you think Qiruo Jie seems to have been captivated by the little man she bought? Isn't that a fox spirit? Isn't such a beautiful man the fox spirit among the storytellers? Don't talk nonsense, Sister Qiruo knows how to make a living. In the future, don't talk about what you have or don't have in front of her. If she hits her husband again, I won't spare you." Lu Dashing glared at Lu Ziping. Previously, Qiruo's husband was all thanks to Lu Ziping and Lu Qimei's broken mouths, and he said things that didn't seem like a big deal all day, which made people annoyed. "I understand. You've said this hundreds of times." Lu Ziping shrunk his neck and snorted, she was just joking with Qiruo. Who knew she couldn't help but make a scene like this, and even through all her anger at that little fox spirit. Qiruo walked home lightly and saw that the door was closed. She didn't wake up Yunzimu, so she picked up the bag she had placed by the wall in the daytime and left. When the four of them pushed and pulled to the town, it was already dawn and they were all starving, growling incessantly. Qiruo asked them to wait at the entrance of the wild food store and go buy their own food. After searching for a pharmacy that had already opened, Qiruo walked in. Although the medicinal herbs she picked up were not precious, they were also exchanged for half a tael of silver. "I went out to find a steamed bun shop, bought 20 buns and spent 41, leaving 461. Qiruo collected all of them. 4 people leaned against the wall and ate all the buns in a few bites. Lu Ziping covered his mouth and yawned before sleeping against the wall. When she woke up, there were no more people around her, and the car and the black bear on it were gone. Just as Lu Ziping turned pale in fear, Qiruo walked over with a smiling Lu Dashing in Lu Qimei. "Wake up from sleep." Qiruo smiled and took out an ingot of silver from his arms, handing it to Lu Ziping and facing the 3 people, "Because my family is in urgent need of money recently, I first paid back the money I borrowed from sisters last time, and then I will give you 1 or 2 hard fees. I will thank you all after a few days." Qiruo clenched her fists and said to the 3 of them, "Last time I borrowed 4 taels each, but this time I gave them 5 taels each. I still have 30.5 taels left. These silver coins will be used to repair the roof first, add some food, and leave some for later use. Yunzimu's injuries must be checked. By this calculation, even 10 more big bears are not enough." "Qiruo, what are you doing?" If my sister can help you, where else can I ask for your hard work? You can treat me to a drink another day. Lu Ziping was alone and didn't care much about these things. For her, Su Qiruo was much more important than money. Here you go, take it. I'll have to trouble you again in the future. My grain tank has already bottomed out, so I'm going to buy grain later. Do you have anything to buy? I'm not buying anything. I'm going to take this silver back to my mother, so she won't keep saying I'm like a worm, eating alone won't do anything. Lu Qimei quickly shook her head. Last time, she said she had caught a wild boar and shared 4 taels of silver with someone who borrowed it. Her mother even said she was bragging, but today she wants them to take a look. It's only then that Lu Qimei disdains to boast about such a cow. I'm going to buy some dim sum for the 2 children at home, and I've been clamoring for food for a long time. When Lu Dashing talked about his own children, he was full of smiles and couldn't resist the happiness. Then I'll accompany Sister Qiruo to buy grain and help her move things. Sister Qi, please keep an eye on the car. Lu Ziping followed Su Qiruo to the grain shop, and Lu Dashing went to the dim sum shop, leaving Lu Qimei sitting beside the cart with her arms folded and giggling. I don't know if there is something wrong with the child. I checked the information, usually 1 or 2 gold equals 10 taels of silver equals 1,000 won. One article is approximately equal to 0.2 yuan, so the algorithm in the article is also estimated based on this value. Thank you, book friend. Hello, B's monthly pass, thank you, book friend. 2 monthly passes for Nanangxi River. Thank you to the book friend Mori Yulu for sending the roses. Thank you for the recommended tickets and red beans sent by the little ones. Thank you for collecting comments. I will continue to work hard. Thank you for your great help and support. I love you. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Angry Wives Will Pain People. 9. Qiruo Jia, what you bought this time are all polished rice and white noodles. Lu Ziping couldn't help but sigh as he looked at what Su Qiruo had bought. Zimu's health is not good, and it was me who couldn't stop him before. Since I said I wanted to live a good life in the future, I can't let him suffer anymore. Su Qiruo's words were very surprising to Lu Ziping. From childhood to adulthood, this was the first time she had heard Su Qiruo say these words so seriously. But Lu Ziping was about to say that Yun Zimu did not allow Su Qiruo to touch, but when he thought of Lu Dashing's warning, he swallowed those words back. There's nothing wrong with it. Since you have to live a life, you shouldn't be aimless. You should also try to save some money and start a family earlier, so that your life is complete. After Su Qiruo finished speaking, he carried the rice he had just bought and walked out. Lu Ziping looked at Su Qiruo's back and didn't know what he was thinking. He heard Su Qiruo call her, so he quickly picked up the bag of white flour and chased after her. Watching Su Qiruo buy so many things in big and small packages, Lu Qimei couldn't help but smack her lips again. This Qiruo sister is really willing. The 4 of them walked back to Lujia village, just in time for lunch. Su Qiruo bought too many things, so several people sent Su Qiruo back first, helped her unload the things, and then went home separately. Yun Zimu, who was sitting in a daze inside the room, heard the sound and quickly supported the wall to walk out. His leg was particularly painful today. Wife master. Standing outside the door was Su Qiruo, who had not returned all night. Yun Zimu only felt his nose sour, and he thought she had gone to drink big wine again. Su Qiruo looked up and saw Yun Zimu with a pale face. Looking at the darkness in his eyes, he thought he didn't sleep well last night. Strode over and held on to Yun Zimu's arm, Su Qiruo directly helped the person into the room and sat down. Crouching down to look at Yun Zimu's legs, Su Qiruo asked with concern, but the leg hurt so much. Yun Zimu bit his lip without responding, and Su Qiruo knew it was him who was in severe pain. Bending down to pick up the person, regardless of Yunzimu's expression, Qiruo directly lifted the person onto the bed. Lifting up his pants legs, Qiruo's face became increasingly ugly as he looked at his swollen knees and the bruises on his legs. I want you to take good care of yourself in bed. If you become a little cripple in the future, it will be too late to regret. Qiruo sternly scolded while taking out a bottle of medicine bought from the town from his arms, gently rubbing it on his swollen knee, and pouring a little into his heart. I'll rub it for you, it may hurt a bit. Please endure it. Qiruo's hand just touched Yunzimu's leg, and the person on the bed shrank and trembled, whether it was painful or shy. At this moment, Qiruo was completely focused and didn't notice so much, but Yunzimu was shy and unbearable. This was the second time she had seen his legs. From childhood to adulthood, even her father had never lifted his pants like this. If it had been in the past, Yunzimu would have cried and avoided, but when facing Qiruo now, he didn't do that. Thinking of his father's words, Yunzimu's nose suddenly turned sour. He didn't want to follow his father's old path, but things were somewhat out of his control. Until she rubbed all the ointment into her leg, Qiruo finally moved her hand from the other person's leg. He took out 2 warm meat buns from his arms and stuffed them into Yunzimu's hand. Qiruo said softly, I'll go outside and bring things in. You should eat the buns quickly. Yunzimu looked at the bun in her hand and instinctively handed it to Qiruo. My wife also eats. I've had it outside before, and it's specifically for you. I didn't eat in the morning, did I? Eat it quickly, and I'll make you some meat pancakes tonight. Qiruo only had 5 buns in the morning and didn't eat at noon, but these 2 buns were originally bought by her for Yunzimu. How could she be willing to eat them? After going out to drink a bowl of warm water, Qiruo began to move the things she had bought into the house. She moved the rice and noodles to the stove and put them in a rice jar. She also bought a small bag of eggs for Yunzimu, fearing that there might be accidents if they were placed outside, so they were all taken into the main house by Qiruo. Compared to rice and noodles, this egg is really not cheap. Yunzimu, who was biting the bun with a small bite, stared at Qiruo with a pair of shiny big eyes. When she saw that she had bought so many things and returned, she couldn't help but frown, suddenly feeling that the bun in her hand was no longer fragrant. Where did the wife come from with so much silver? Shouldn't it be something bad done? I don't know if he understood Yunzimu's thoughts, but Qiruo talked to him about selling bears while carrying things. Taking out the remaining 30 taels of silver from his arms and placing it in front of Yunzimu, Qiruo smiled and said, I'm planning to repair our house before the rainy season. You keep this money for now, and when I earn some more later, we'll invite someone to come and repair the house. Meanwhile, I'll remove this wooden board and make a big kong for you here. Then, the western house will also tidy up and make a small kong, and I'll go to the western house to sleep in the future. By the way, I'll have someone build a small house next to the stove, specifically for bathing and cleansing in the future, clean and safe. Qiruo spoke of his plans, and Yunzimu couldn't help but fantasize along. If we could make a large kong, sleeping in winter would not be cold, right? It's warm, just thinking about it makes me feel happy. But is it not afraid that he will run away with the silver when the wife puts all this silver with him? Although Yunzimu rarely goes out, he has also heard of many men who took money from their wives and ran away, causing harm to many women. Judging from the wife's appearance, it is clear that she trusts him very much. Yunzimu felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. He carefully put away the silver, but he didn't say any polite words. Upon seeing this, Qiruo knew that this little guy was slowly accepting her, and his mood also improved accordingly. Take out a brand new pair of cloth shoes and a set of dark blue clothes and place them next to Yunzimu. Without saying anything, Qiruo went out to fetch water and chop firewood. With trembling hands, Yunzimu unfolded the clothes, which were still wrapped in 2 sets of soft inner clothes. With a flat mouth, tears suddenly rolled out uncontrollably. Why should my wife treat him so well? Even when he was in the Yun mansion, he had never worn such a new garment. It was only the legitimate princes who left behind what they didn't want, that it was their turn to be a commoner. A person like him who never competed, even if they didn't want it, it was not his turn. Yunzimu used to live a life that was not even as good as a servant, so if Su Qi treated him so well now, he always felt a bit unreal. With tears in her eyes, Yunzimu ate 2 meat buns and started to daydream while holding on to her new clothes and shoes. When Su Qiruo came in, he saw Yunzimu sleeping by the bedside. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Angry Wives Will Pain People, 10. This child is indeed good. Looking, no wonder the original owner would rather starve to death and borrow money to buy him back. Su Qiruo smiled and shook his head, carefully laying the person flat, and then covered him with his newly bought thin blanket before leaving to prepare dinner. Su Qiruo, who had been thinking of going to the mountains again the next day, suddenly changed his mind. Yunzimu's leg injury was not yet healed, and if she was often not at home, he would not be able to take care of himself. She still had to stay and take care of him for a few days before leaving. Su Qiruo chopped the purchased meat into a filling, evenly plump and thin, added some scallions, and mixed a small piece of noodles for about half an hour before starting to roll out pancakes. When Yunzimu woke up, it happened to be ready. Are these all done by the wife's master? Yunzimu looked in surprise at the yellow and meaty cake in front of her, and couldn't believe her eyes. Try it and see if it suits your appetite. Su Qiruo picked up a piece and handed it to Yunzimu, then picked it up and took a bite. It seems a bit salty. The filling is a bit salty, but the taste is really good. Delicious. Yunzimu whispered a compliment and then blushed. Where is the reason for a wife to cook for her husband? But the wife has been taking care of him these days. Perhaps hitting him when she was drunk before was really not intentional. How could such a good wife have such a cruel heart? It must be all drinking alcohol. As long as the wife doesn't drink alcohol, she will always be treated this way well. In the end, Yunzimu himself came up with a truth, which is that no matter what, he cannot let his wife drink alcohol. Through constant care and being taken care of, Su Qiruo's relationship with Xiao Fulang became increasingly harmonious. When Yunzimu looked at her, the fear in his eyes faded a lot, and there was also a hint of dependence. Is it still painful? Helping Yunzi to get out of bed, Su Qiruo looked on and cared. After lying down for so many days, the knee injury has finally improved, and the bruises on the legs have also faded a lot. Today the sun was good outside, so Su Qiruo allowed Yunzimu to go out for a walk. Yunzimu gently shook her head, but in fact, the pain had already subsided. He has suffered such injuries from childhood to adulthood, and no one has ever cared about them. Even Yunzimu herself doesn't think it's a big deal, but his wife keeps him lying in bed and raising him, not even on the ground, let alone working. During these days, the work at home was mostly done by Su Qi, and Yunzimu felt like she was almost bedridden. As long as it doesn't hurt, don't walk too much during this period of time. Take good care of yourself, and when you completely recover, you don't have to worry about what kind of illness we'll leave behind in the future. It's inconvenient for your legs and feet to suffer when you get old. Looking up at the sky, Su Qiruo couldn't help but remember the exposed roof she saw on the day she first arrived, so she helped Yunzimu sit on the bamboo chair in the yard. This bamboo chair was bought by Su Qiruo from Carpenter Lu the day before yesterday. It was placed under a big tree in the yard, and when he had free time, he would lie down and drink tea. Isn't it enjoyable? Yunzimu curiously touched the handle of the chair, then touched the back of the chair, and leaned back against it, swaying it. She really liked it. Gently pursing her lips, Yunzimu suddenly boldly called out to Su Qiruo, who was gesturing something with a broom by the window, "Wife lord." Su Qiruo looked curiously at Yunzimu, who was now accustomed to calling her that way. I want to sit here and embroider handkerchiefs. Is that okay? A pair of watery big eyes filled with prayers, but Qiruo couldn't bear to refuse. Stepping into the room, he took out the small basket containing needles and thread and handed it to Yunzimu. His dark eyes immediately lit up. Zimu, please sit in the yard first. I'll go ask big sister to see if we can take advantage of the good weather these days and find some people to come and renovate the house. Qiruo went back to the house and grabbed 2 pairs of preserved fruits for Yunzimu, wrapped them in lotus leaves. He thought it was not good to go to Lu Dasheng's house empty-handed. Even if he didn't bring anything for the adults, he would have to decorate something for the children to eat. Yunzimu nodded obediently, looking at Qiruo's departing figure. Her gaze flickered and suddenly fell on her new shoes. He is wearing the new clothes and shoes that Qiruo bought for him a few days ago, which are extremely comfortable. But thinking of the grass shoes on Qiruo's feet that had already been ground to hair, Yunzimu's eyebrows suddenly tightened. It seems that the wife only bought him new clothes, but she didn't buy anything herself. Yunzimu lightly pursed her lips, then placed the basket aside and stood up with a chair. First, he found a pair of Qiruo's old grass shoes and measured them. Then, he took out the cloth that Qiruo had bought him to make new clothes, and Yunzimu carried it out of the house. He learned embroidery and tailoring when he was at the Yun family, and he also knows how to make shoes. Since the wife was reluctant to buy shoes for herself, he decided to personally make a pair for her, with a few extra layers on the soles, and put on a soft and secure one. Qiruo was very efficient in handling affairs. He left the door in the morning and the person who was repairing the house in the afternoon came to him. Many unfamiliar women came to the yard, and Yunzimu was clearly a bit scared. Qiruo sent him to Lu Dasheng's house first, and then went to pick him up when the workers left. Lu Dasheng's husband, Qian Shi, also lived a life. Although he was not beautiful, he was very capable. Before this, he had never dealt with Yunzimu before. It was just that he had first seen such a beautiful young man. Apart from the 2 children always surrounding Yunzimu at home, Qian Shi was also very enthusiastic about Yunzimu. I'm not saying that, Su's younger brother, you look really beautiful. No wonder Qiruo's sister hides you like a treasure all day long, and never brings us to know each other. Qian bit off the thread of the clothes sewn in her hand with her teeth, and smiled without lifting her head. He knew about some things about Qiruo and Yunzimu in the past, but when his wife told him that Qiruo was getting ready to live a good life and had been doting on her husband recently, he couldn't help but praise Qiruo in front of Yunzimu. As a close person, he naturally wanted to match people together. Yunzimu's ears turned red and she shyly pursed her lips. I don't like going out, and my wife is usually busy, which is why I rarely see people from the village. Yunzimu kept silent about the injury on her leg. Since the wife has already improved, let's let the past go. After all, they were all men. Seeing Yunzimu's pitiful expression, Qian couldn't help but feel heartbroken. The rough and calloused hand patted the back of Yunzimu's hand, and Qian sighed softly, saying, although Qiruo has done some bad things in the past, she is not an unforgivable villain. Now that she knows she is wrong, you can give her a chance to live a good life with her. There is no such thing as a quarrel between these 2, but only her own wife will feel sorry for us, right? End of this chapter.